Today is November the 26th. I am Melissa Pache. I'm the CEO of the Whistler Chamber of Commerce. Good evening. I would like to acknowledge that we're having this virtual meeting on the shared territories of the Squamish and Lillooet Nations. We honor their language, culture, land, and traditions. Welcome to this evening's virtual Women of Whistler event, Thriving Through Crisis. Meeting virtually is certainly quite different, of course, than sharing a cocktail or a glass of wine with all of you in person, as we've done for so many years with Women of Whistler. We're all looking forward to the day where we get to be together once again in a room, sharing stories and connecting with one another. But for now, we continue to practice our social distancing. We wear our masks, being safe, be patient, and of course, fall in love with Zoom, or not. For the last several months, the Chamber has hosted many virtual webinars to support our members and broader business community. It's our pleasure to host our second virtual Women of Whistler this evening. I would like to thank Race & Co. for once again being the presenting partner for this year's Women of Whistler, making it possible for our chamber, your chamber, to offer this webinar free of charge for our members. The purpose of Women of Whistler is to fuel personal and professional development for business women right here in our own backyard. This season holds unique challenges both personally and in business as we move through these challenging and uncharted territories together. Our guest speakers tonight are local experts engaged in authentic conversation and will share insights around topics such as building personal resilience, managing stress, and fostering supportive conversations. Our guests will also discuss the different ways businesses can pivot in order to thrive in a time where transition and change are constant and we adopt to our new normal. Today, we're honored to have with us an incredible panel of women that I get to work with every day. Teresa Lambert, Chair, Women of Whistler Committee. Wendy Hargraves, Director of Sales and Marketing, the Fairmont Chateau Whistler. The beautiful Jackie Dickinson, Executive Director, Whistler Community Services Society, the heart of our community. Heather Odendaal, co-founder of WNORTH. It's my pleasure to welcome tonight's moderator, Theresa Lambert. Teresa is the best-selling author of Achieve with Grace, a guide to excellence and effectiveness in intense workplaces, a professional coach, mindset strategist, and motivational speaker. After 20 years in the hospitality industry, she took the plunge into entrepreneurship and hung her hat from the hotel GM to found her company, Theresa Lambert Coaching and Consulting Incorporated, right here in our community. She now coaches and teaches high-achieving women to succeed with more elegance and less struggle. Teresa has begun her second year as chair of the Women of Whistler. Please help me virtually clap. Welcome, Teresa. Over to you, Teresa.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women of Whistler event, Thriving During Crisis. We're so excited to be here this evening. And if you're here with us, feel free to drop it in the comments. I can see Jane joined us. If you're here, let us know where you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you, and drop in comments as we go, and also use that Q&A box as things come up, because we will have a Q&A later on as well. And we're really honored and excited to have this amazing panel of local leaders this evening. And I feel really blessed to be able to be here with these powerful women that I all know personally as well. So first up, I'd like to introduce everyone. We've got Wendy Hargraves, who's a true powerhouse. Throughout her career in hospitality and tourism, she has had the pleasure of gaining a variety of experiences, from hotels and fishing resorts to destinations and art festivals. She moved to this community 5 years ago, and she's the Director of Sales and Marketing at the beautiful Fairmont Chateau Whistler. Wendy brings over 25 years of experience in hospitality sales and marketing leadership, and she's committed to working with clients and colleagues to ensure outstanding experiences. And I can vouch for that. When she's not at the hotel, she loves being in the mountains, where she takes every opportunity to embrace the outdoors, participate in arts, and connect with people who make Whistler the special place that it is. And then next up is Jackie Dickinson, who is a beacon of light in this community, truly. Jackie has been fortunate to work in a variety of roles at the Whistler Community Services Society for over 10 years, and currently is the executive director. She's acquired training in the areas of mental health, first aid, and critical incident debriefing as a frontline outreach worker. And she has developed programs and services to support new parents, young adults, families, and the communities most vulnerable and at risk. She's a passionate advocate for community well-being, mental health, food security, and harm reduction initiatives. And she's also a mom of 2 boys and can often be found running in the early morning and late evenings as a way to relieve stress, get outside, and enjoy this beautiful community she's proud to call home. And last but not least, we've got Heather Odinthal, who's an accomplished entrepreneur, brand builder, and event producer whose decades of experience in corporate environments inspired her to create WNORTH, a global organization of women who support each other's rise to corporate leadership. While working for a Fortune 500 company, Heather noticed that there were few women in senior executive positions. Fueled to initiate change, in 2014, she started a WNORTH conference for women in business seeking C-suite positions. She's also co-chair for the Nicola Goddard Fund at True Patriot Love Foundation, an organization supporting female veterans, and was recently appointed to the board of the Whistler Chamber of Commerce. When Heather isn't bridging the corporate gender gap, she spends her time at home in Whistler, Canada with her husband, WNORTH's co-founder, and their 2 children. Wow. Thank you all so much for being here, truly, to talk about this important topic, to thriving during a crisis, as well as building stress resilience. So let's dive right in. I would love us to start by really taking you all back first to March 2020. What was it like going through, this first lockdown as the world was shutting down in March? And how has that evolved over this year and now with everything that we're experiencing currently as of November 26th? Heather, I'd love to start with you, and I'm going to move through the panel.
Thanks, Teresa. Taking my mind back to March, it was kind of early March. I was just returning from a business trip, and probably on the 6th, and airports were really getting quiet, and we had our conference coming up in 6 weeks. And we were at this time where a lot of corporate organizations, tech organizations, had started making really strict rules. Many of our conference attendees had started to reach out and said, we can't travel. And that's when I really started to realize something big is happening, and we're going to have to make some major changes. Being a small business owner and having 150 people registered for a conference that I didn't even know if we could execute, it was extremely unsettling. And from a financial perspective, I was kind of wondering, what am I going to do? And I'll never forget the day that I got a call from Susan Bain at the Needle Lake Lodge, which is where we host our conference. And it was a conversation with Susan and the reassurance that she's got, that we've got your back, and whatever we need to do, we'll make it work. I think beyond that, before that, I was in complete denial. I was I guess I didn't know what I was going to do. And so what I think the significance of that is surrounding yourself with great partners and surrounding yourself with great organizations that at the end of the day are a great alignment with you, and that they've got your back. And so we made the quick shift. We pushed the conference to October at that point, and we made all the communications. And in fact, we did all this before the government had even sort of publicly said anything. So it was around the time where a lot of the major events were canceling. So South by Southwest had canceled, major film festivals, but those were big events. They were hundreds of thousands of people, and my event for 150, I thought, well, maybe can I still do it? So it was that shift in mindset that was like, no, actually, I think this is a big change. And when we pushed everything and we weren't doing the conference till October, there was about 5 days where I kind of sat with it, and I was like watching everything go. I watched the Canadian border close. I watched women in our community and beyond have all their kids come home from daycare and school. And we watched people lose their job. And shortly thereafter, I realized, you know what? I got to do something. I can't just sit quiet during this time. So we decided to launch Pivot, which was a virtual free conference to support and to bring together thought leaders around, what to do during this time. And one of the key topics was essentially like remote working, getting your head around remote working, like what does this look like? And then another topic was, working at home with kids. This, to put it in perspective, this was 3 weeks in, 2.5 weeks into the pandemic or I guess 2 weeks into the pandemic, we decided to do it. We assembled 20 speakers and we launched 2 weeks later. So it was like the quickest conference I've ever planned. And we had 600 people come. And, that's kind of what happened in the 4 weeks of the lockdown. On top of that, I also had my own children that had come home from daycare, and both of them in daycare, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old now. And, navigating all of this crazy space. But that's kind of what happened in the shift in March 2020. I can't remember if you asked beyond that month, but it was a hectic month.
Wow, it's incredible. I love too that you said that you sat with it, because I think that, obviously was important for you, and you came up with a pivot that really helped you put something together that was so needed at the time. So, I want to commend you for that, because it's not always easy. And I'm sure everybody that's in the room listening, and also Wendy and Jackie, you can appreciate that pivoting and coming up with something new on the drop of a hat with everything changing like this, right, can be a really, really difficult thing. So Jackie, how about you? I mean, coming from more of a community perspective, how was this experience like? And maybe what is it like right now?
Yeah, so I've kind of had the opportunity to be on both sides of the spectrum. And so when the pandemic hit and the lockdown happened, I was actually on parental leave. And so nurturing my new son that I had just given birth to about 3 or 4 months ago. And so I was in a world that was different than I am now working full time as part of an essential service in a community organization. And when the pandemic first hit, well, just to put into perspective, I'd had this wonderful baby, and but was really struggling emotionally in the winter, lots of anxiety. And so I had kind of circled on my calendar March 20th as this like magical day when spring was going to happen, and I was going to start walking outside and getting more active and being more out there. And March 14th, the world as we know it completely changed. And it really had us all rethink what our March breaks would look like, what our lives would look like, what would tourism look like. And at that time, I just started walking with my kids in the morning. I'd wake up every morning and just start walking, because that was the one thing we could do. And as time went on, and we kept walking, the interesting part about this walk that I did with both my sons each morning within the pandemic in that lockdown time was a walk that in theory should have got quicker or shorter became longer. And that's because we'd stop and socially distance and connect with our neighbors and meet people that we never knew before. We'd never met. We weren't on the same timelines, and developed relationships with people that have gone on to be way more meaningful to us 7 or 8 months later. But I was in a world of like being at home all the time, being with my kids and homeschooling. And when the pandemic hit, I remember my wonderful coworker, who was the leader of Whistler Community Services at the time, and still is a leader for us at WCSS, Lori Pine, who's on this call, and she's one of the most magical, magnificent people I've ever met. And she called me and she said, Jackie, this pandemic has hit. I know you're at home, but I just want you to know that when you come back July 1st, I have no idea what Whistler Community Services is going to look like. And all that experience you've had and everything that you've brought with it, I can't guarantee. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I remember hanging up the phone, and that was my moment. My moment was, wow, my universe and everything I knew was about to change. So I returned back to work July 1st. So now in this situation, as cases climb and we're verging on public health orders that are restricting more of what we do in an effort to stay safe. I'm in a completely different world of still being a mom to 2 boys, but my husband, Jason, my wonderful partner, is at home with them, and I get this chance to work with this wonderful group of people. But what I realized when I came back to work was I showed up July 1st and I had no idea what anyone else had experienced. And Lori said to me, she said, you know, Jack, I'm going to say something to you. I'm going to be honest. And that is that you don't know what any of these people have gone through. And she was so right. I didn't know. I didn't know their experiences. I knew my own, but I didn't know theirs. And so it was coming into a role and learning from all these people, all the strategies and things they had done, all the heroic efforts they had demonstrated and hard work they had done. But what's interesting now going into the second wave is that this is a completely different climate, and all those strategies, all those things that we did before, they don't apply because our doors are open, our essential services are open, and at this point, we haven't experienced that same level of a lockdown. So we're now looking for strategies and ways to support our physical health, to support our mental health, but there's strategies that are different from what we experienced in the spring. So what I've taken away from these experiences is that you have to be willing to listen because you absolutely don't know what other people have experienced. I'm certainly not an expert. I want to believe I'm a learner and a person who's willing to kind of go on this journey and never quite get it all figured out. And there's got to be a willingness. We often talk about this in our place of work at Whistler Community Services, and this is a line from Greg McDonnell, who's an amazing clinical counselor. Here's your comfort zone, and this is where you need to be. You need to be completely out of your comfort zone. And that mantra, that's something that he's been saying to me for years, and it so applies now. All these conversations we have are completely outside of our comfort zone. So it's sitting in that, as Heather said, like feeling comfortable in that, of being uncomfortable, and a willingness to listen and learn from people who maybe have a lens or perspective that's not your own.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Jackie. And I love that you shared too that it's been an ongoing process of learning, and that the best we can do is listen, and this whole idea of getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. I mean, it's pretty impressive how we've all gone from thinking that we have control over certain things to realizing that that really never fully existed, and now we know why. Right? Like, it's pretty impressive. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so Wendy, you know, for me, this experience was so different because I left the hotel world in January, so just a couple of months before, but I remember feeling so strange for not being in it, similar to what, you know, Jackie shared, that I was like, wow, I have no idea what they're all going through. But I was just feeling for all of you being in a hotel, being in a business that gives service to people where social distancing would be the last word that you would ever find in any manual of how to work with guests. Not that we hug everybody, but it certainly is a lot about hospitality, warmth, connection, being with people. How has this experience been like for you, being in a hotel in a world that is all about inviting people to come in and gather?
Yeah, it's obviously been extremely different. You know, when I think back to when it first started, personally, I think I kind of laugh at myself because I think I had big eyes and I was quite quiet for a few weeks, and I was just like, thank gosh, my boss was very calm, because I couldn't quite believe what was happening. I have a really vivid imagination, and I felt like I'd been dropped into a Margaret Atwood novel. I was just like, this is bad. But we all thought it was short term. And so incredibly busy, you know, for that first month or so, canceling, you know, we're heading into conference season, we're a big group hotel, just canceling groups and rebooking for the fall, sort of like Heather said, you know, we all thought it was going to last maybe to the fall. And so just making those kind of decisions and then needing to make them again. And I think that what we've learned and how different that is now is, what we learned was that by being together as a team, working together, that we could get through it, and we could come up with ways that we could still serve guests and create an experience for people that they were looking for. And we've also now come to a place where we're so used to change, like that we don't expect anything to stay the same. So that is just our new normal for sure. It's just, we used to be shocked that we had to update things on the website every single day. And now that's just considered normal. That's just what we do. And we also, I think, now come up with more like different scenarios, or different sort of marketing strategies from my perspective for different scenarios, because we all have to admit, we don't know what's going to happen. So now we kind of say, well, if this happens, we'll go this way. If this happens, that way. And that's really that pivoting that, everyone talks about, but it really is the way that we have to move forward. And just really fortunate to have so much support, whether it's like within our hotel, but also within the community. Having, people like Melissa and the Chamber and Tourism Whistler and the Resort Municipality constantly helping us understand what the guidelines were and how we needed to move forward, because that was one of the hardest parts, is trying to understand what we were allowed to do or what we shouldn't do, and what we wanted to do to primarily keep everyone safe, whether it was our employees or our guests. Just having that sense of everyone working together is really what has helped to get us to where we are today. And I think we're so much better able to cope with the challenges that are happening now heading into the second wave.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think working together sounds like was also a theme for a lot of you. And I love what you said, this whole idea of expect things to change. That could be like the title for 2020, expect things to change, right? At a drop of a hat. And what I really love with everything that all of you three shared is, your ability to really, do your best to understand what's going on and then respond to it the best way you possibly can, because I think that takes a lot. And, that's such a good trait too of good leadership that we've seen this year, that it's really about, understanding and then responding to it based on the information you have right in that moment, without being able to assume what's going to happen next. And, while it may not feel good right now, I do believe that this is going to be a skill that will be really valuable, as we head into the future. Now, you mentioned this already, Wendy, and I want to move to Heather, but this word that keeps coming up and I hear a lot about is this idea of a power pivot and making constant power pivots and power shifts as you go through. And Heather, I know I was lucky to attend the first ever virtual WNORTH conference just this past October, but I would love for you to speak a little bit to at what point you realized that it was time to make this power pivot, and what was the experience like and what did you do?
Thanks, Teresa. And also I want to acknowledge and thank Teresa from the beginning of being one of the biggest cheerleaders of WNORTH and bringing me to NITA 5 years ago. So thank you, Teresa. So yes, the pivot to a virtual conference. So for those of you who are maybe not familiar, WNORTH conference has executed an annual conference in Whistler for 5 years in a row, and then 6 would have been April. And we didn't move to virtual right away. We postponed the in-person conference to October. And it was not until July that, I was holding on, watching all the news. At that point, gatherings of 50 people were allowed. Our event was 150. We could downgrade it to 100 if needed. So I was still holding on to this idea of meeting in person, because at the end of the day, as much as I love virtual events, I've been an event planner in Whistler for 17 years, and I love the personal connection. And intimate gatherings, even if it's only 12 to 15 people. That to me is so powerful. And so there's that denial again. I was like, not necessarily denial, but like a hope maybe is a better way of putting it. The hope that in-person events would come back in the fall. And by July, at that point, it was fairly clear it's not going to be. And so I knew we had to pivot to virtual. And we have a small team. So it was uncharted territory, didn't really, have the technology. And in some cases, and certain technologies investments were, beyond my reach. So I had a lot of research to do, but we pivoted to virtual, and we did execute a conference the end of October. And through that whole process, we also launched a leadership course. We went to 100% virtual from a WNORTH perspective, and from a Bluebird Strategy, which is my event company where we have weddings and other events, they just were all canceled. And so not only did I pivot WNORTH, but I pivoted, I guess, my skill set too, because I kind of had to just learn a whole bunch of new technologies. And since we're a small shop, it was about reading up on, production and virtual production and that type of thing. So, but what I will say about pivot, because now it's become a word that has come up a lot, is there are all these there are different iterations, right? Like I feel like I can't make a plan for next month I can only make a plan based on what I know right now. And, we did pivot to virtual, but in my heart, the moment we can go back to in-person events and safely, I'm right there, because I do know, and I actually had an interview with a university student was doing a project on events. She's in event management. And she sort of looked me straight in the Zoom eye and said, am I going to have a job when I graduate? And it was like, whew, because I can tell that she is, and I'm getting emotional because she looked me straight in the eye and was like, I chose this degree 3 years ago. I'm putting all this steam behind it. And I said, you know what? I actually think you're going to have lots of job offers, because maybe there's not as many people going into events. Maybe there's not as many people going into that. So on the topic of pivot, know that everything is going to change on a constant, and there is always going to be, as personal improvement, like we can always find ways to learn more, become an expert in virtual events. Like there's just always ways to improve yourself and your business. So that's kind of what I have to say about pivot.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Heather. And I think you sort of hit a sweet spot there too. Also, mentioning that it has been a tough time. I myself had conversations with tourism students this past year. I did a lot of support, coached people pro bono, and just did what I could. And I had some conversations with people, and it was heartbreaking at times. But, at the end of the day, I think there is this, at some point, this too shall pass. Right? Like this too shall pass. And I agree, like the energy of in-person events, right? Like even you were talking about it and it gave me those goosebumps. And I remember our last in-person event in February was amazing. And, that is the things that I think are also so important, that we hold on to them and that we don't forget them. And, that there is a way to get back there. We just have to sort of stay steady. And, for you to pivot fully virtual and to learn the new skills, right? Like those are not easy things, and it's scary to make some of these decisions. And I'm sure Wendy and Jackie, you've made a lot of decisions this year that felt scary because you just do not know. And I just think it's amazing the creative ideas that people have come up out of this and really embraced. So Wendy, on that note, I'm like dying to hear what some of the creative ideas you have done at Fairmont to make this environment work for you at the given time you were in. And can you speak a little bit to that and what you learned throughout that as well?
Absolutely. So we were quite fortunate at the beginning of the pandemic, being such a large branded hotel, that some of the challenges where we were really helped by corporate. So corporate very quickly came out with a program called All Stay Well. So with lots of guidelines and protocols on how to run the hotel safely. So that took a lot of the questions out of it for us, and our operations team was able to just do what we needed to do, implement all of those safety protocols very, very early. We were fully implemented with all the safety protocols that we have in place now by the beginning of June. So that, what that did is that I think enabled the team here to then think about being creative and looking at the situation that we were in that moment, and trying to understand what are the needs going to be of the travelers, the people that are going to come here, you know, this summer, this fall, that sort of thing. So you know, obviously, like I think a lot of people know, one of the big opportunities was dining, that everyone wanted to be outside. There, you know, weren't enough seats inside with all the social distancing. So we came together as a team and decided that we should utilize the Woodlands Terrace, which is a big banquet facility area at our hotel with a big tent, and it's used only really for groups, but they had all gone away. So we had this big, beautiful 5,000 square foot tent, and with everyone coming together, from the executive chef and director of food and beverage and banquets and sales and marketing, really brainstormed and came up with a concept that would work with our limited staffing and everything like that. And it was such a success. We just did so well. It was exactly what the community needed. A lot of locals came, as well as people who were visiting. And so those are those little moments where you have little win moments, because there's not a lot, you know. I know, you know, we're so fortunate in Whistler, like from a Fairmont perspective, we have been done so much better than all of the city properties you can imagine in North America. And so, you know, from a corporate perspective, we're just like superstars, and that's hard to feel like that, because it's like, it's really not that good, but it's better than it is in other places. So just really appreciating that, and knowing that there are those opportunities. But we didn't know, you know, you almost have to be like fearlessly creative, because you make these decisions to try something knowing that next week you could have to stop. And so that's really the hard part, is we don't know how long things are going to happen for. I think we're better at kind of knowing that now, but at the beginning you would come up with a great idea, but you'd think, well, that's going to be a lot of work and it's going to cost some money, and we don't even know if it's going to be allowed or in 2 weeks from now. So when do you pull the trigger? When do you choose to kind of go for it and try new things? And you always have to weigh out the pros and the cons and the expense and the resources, because that's been a challenge. So yeah, moving forward, but I think we've kind of just come to a place right now, because now we're in a different place and trying to figure out how we're going to get sort of through the winter, not having some of the great things like outdoor be as easily accessible. But yeah, I think we're good. I think we're kind of decided to be more just go for it. You know, I think we're going to just go for it and try. And if it all changes and we can't do it, we'll just deal with it then. But as opposed to maybe not trying, we'd rather try and fail and than not do anything at all. So I think that culture has been created with us now. We were all more fearful at the beginning, and now we're kind of getting used to living in that place. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest areas. The other little area really quickly I think is really funny is from sales and marketing. So of course, we had to do sites without people visiting, and they were so organic at the beginning. It was like a sales manager walking around the hotel, like, look at it, here's the ballroom, and you know, and really pretty low budget, but people appreciated it, and you know, and it went well. To now, you know, 8 months later, we have like curated, amazing online, you know, virtual BDT sites that you know, have pre-recorded things, and so you really do, like I was saying, like all the stuff we didn't know how to do, you figure it out, and you come up with the best ways to move forward. So
Heather, I feel
Thank
like you wanted to say something. Was that right? Or did I just
Nope,
misread
that's fine.
your...
I'm a chatter. I could keep going. So you need to
No,
probably
that
like,
was amazing, Wendy. I loved, the points around being fearlessly creative. And I loved what you said too, we rather fail than not try, right? So we might as well try. I think that's such a good attitude to have, because one of the things that I keep reminding myself and that I say a lot is progress trumps perfection, right? Like, we're not going for perfection right now. We're going for progress. So if we can have a micro win today, if we can have a micro win tomorrow, if we can have a micro win over the holidays, it's a win, right? Like, we don't have to judge it. We don't have to measure it. So I think that was really powerful. So thank you so much for sharing that, and how your team at Fairmont has evolved over this period, and what you've been through. Now, I know, you also sort of alluded to this a little bit, right? That at the beginning, you guys were more fearful, you collaborated, you have a strong sort of support system with corporate as well. And I know not everybody has that. Not everybody is in an organization right now. And, from a community perspective, Jackie, I'd love for you to just weigh in a little bit on, how has this impact been like on the community? What are you seeing right now? And what can we do as a collective community to help foster some of that collaboration and support for each other to make it through for now? Maybe it's the holiday season and we'll regroup in January, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, I've always been able to say, and by working for Whistler Community Services, and I've had a chance to be part of like different interviews and different connections, and sometimes people want to know, like, is there really problems in Whistler, right? Like, I've done interviews on a provincial level, and they're like, what do you mean your food bank is busy? What's going on there? And I've always said that Whistler is not immune to adversity. We experience the same challenges that other communities experience across the province. There's similar ties to other resort communities that exist across North America, and we get to sometimes spend time learning from those other communities around what's happening and what's doing, what's transpiring in these communities. I think the piece for us to know is that for everyone, this ability to thrive or survive in a place of crisis, it's all very individual, how you experience that and how you define that, right? And crisis, we often talk about, is something that takes our life out of balance. It's a radical shift from what we once knew. And I think we can all justify and explain that this pandemic has radically changed our lives, and how we handle that, how we absorb that, and what that looks like in our life is going to be different and individual for everyone. What we do know at Whistler Community Services is when the pandemic first hit, our services started to climb, specifically in April and May. And that's because we weren't sure how long this lockdown would last for. Jobs were gone. Our tourism economy looked completely different. And so there was a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And at that time, we started collecting stats. Our wonderful frontline outreach team we have 4 staff members, Lisa, Sharda, Carla, and Dan, led by Program Manager Carrie Hanna. They were there frontline supporting individuals. And what we discovered in May was that over 57% of those people were identifying, that were accessing support from us through outreach services, were identified as being in a place of crisis. So that's like 1 in every 2 people. We started to see that number decrease through the summer. As many people on this call have already commented, there's a pivot in how people do business and different lens on how they work. But we're starting to see those numbers climb again in the fall. At Whistler Community Services, we provide free online support or in-person support to anyone in the community who needs it. And our numbers last month were the highest we've ever seen in the pandemic. And we've been collecting stats around how we support people and who we support since about 2014. And the amount of people we saw last month was the highest we've seen in the history of collecting stats for Whistler Community Services. Now, most people are like, whoa, that's like, what? That's a lot of people, and should we be worried? And I often say that when people reach out, when people connect, we have to normalize that conversation, and we have to say, that that is a sign of strength of any community when people can acknowledge that they want support, that they need support, and then we have people on the receiving end there who are offering a helping hand. So when we talk about these numbers and these stats going up, I think we should really view it as a strength of our community, that people are looking for support. And we're really lucky at WCSS to get to do this work. And we're not just helping, we're learning from the people that we're connecting with. So we've definitely seen that level of uncertainty and heightened sense of anxiety starting to climb again, and those numbers in November are showing the same. I think the way for us to navigate this, I've been saying that, you know, before the public health orders came out, Dr. Bonnie Henry talked about these like the safe six, and often we think about that as a public health tool and a physical health tool to support our safety in COVID. But I've often said that I think Dr. Bonnie Henry is also giving us a mental health tool, that if we all walked away and said, who's our safe six? Those 6 people that we can virtually at this time call upon, connect with, and support us. If we all thought about those 6 little hunkering downs of groups of people, who would they be? And they shouldn't always be the same people that all agree with you and support you in the same way. They should be people who challenge us. They should be people who think differently of us. They should be people who encourage us to be better. And I'm hoping that one of the things that's going to be positive is taking that safe 6 mentality and saying, who are my 6 people that are going to strengthen me, that are going to challenge me, that are going to allow me to, you know, do the work that looks next. One of the things I'll just say is I'm a huge fan of CBC Radio, and this past week, Matt Galloway did an interview with Barack Obama. And he said, one of my favorite quotes from you, Barack, is, hard things are hard. And that sounds strange, but you know, the response that Barack Obama said was, if things were easy, it would have been solved already. It probably wouldn't have come across your desk. Hard problems are hard. And so, you know, we talk about leadership and we talk about this in our workplace all the time. Larry Pine and I often are talking about things as we're going to work, and we've been listening to our Brene Brown, and she said, Jackie, brave leaders and courageous culture. That's what's needed more than ever. You know, and we've been having these types of conversations with our frontline team. What does brave leadership look like? What do courageous cultures look like? And I think, you know, we can say all these great big things, but what are the practical tools? And for us, we're talking a lot about that safe 6. Who are those people? Who are going to make you better? Who's going to strengthen you?
That's such great advice, Jackie. And I so appreciate as well that you brought up that it's so important that we normalize reaching out and asking for help and support. And I think that's in so many ways, right? Like reaching out and celebrating when we had a win, even in this environment, right? Like it's as important, and it should be as normal as reaching out and sharing that we're struggling and that we're having a day. And, you know, I'm not sure about you ladies, and maybe you can speak to that, but you know, let's be authentic, really authentic. I think we've all had days. I don't know anyone who hasn't had days throughout this. And, you know, I think what you just said, you know, the reaching out, the collaboration, the having 6 people that you can call to, you know, at any time that can help support you, strengthen you, but also help you move forward, right, through this. Like, because there is no other way than through. And I love that hard things are hard. Hard things are hard, but they're worthwhile, right? Like this is a journey worthwhile, even if some days it won't feel like this, because when we come out of it, we'll be so much stronger than when we went into it, whether we were ready for it or not, right? So I would love to hear though, how you ladies have had moments that you've experienced, what you've learned for them, and also how you've maybe sort of worked on, you know, this whole idea of becoming more stress resilient and more change resilient perhaps as well as we went through that. Heather, what are your thoughts? Let's start with you.
So I have definitely had those moments and then continue to have them. And in terms of, you know, resilience to this, I guess maybe I should take a step back and say that before the pandemic hit, things were hard too. You know, like let's not pretend that there weren't challenges before, and that we were all, you know, when we talk about burnout and stress and all of those things, many of us were more burnt out and stressed pre-pandemic. And in a way, I feel like I was. I think one of the things that has been positive, because I know we want to keep things positive as best we can. One of the positive things about the pandemic it has forced people in some ways to slow down, and it has forced people to refocus on their health. Where one door closes, one door opens. Someone loses their job, they maybe have more time to be with their kids. Somebody, has their children home from school, or we all, children home from school or daycare. We are spending more time with them. So, and we're able to learn how to homeschool and add that to your resume. So I think in terms of stress resilience and preparing ourselves, it has been a personal journey of growth for a lot of people. And I'm trying to stay positive in that. I mean, me personally, I have learned a lot from being around my children as much as I have. And, I've learned to slow down and to actually play, which has been incredible, because I will be quite honest with you. I mean, I'm a workaholic, and I self-diagnosed, and, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I don't know that I would have engaged in as much play as I have with my children. So in terms of like building up our stress resilience, 100%, I think there are some really positive things that have come out of this. It forces us to get creative with our exercise. I had been always saying that I was going to do yoga on a TV at home, and have done it actually now that it's the only way to exercise or whatnot. So I definitely think that there are some really good tools that we're putting in our toolbox during this time to be able to prepare ourselves for when things go back to normal, if there is a new normal.
I guess we'll find out, but I love that you learned to slow down and play. I think that's so important. Wendy, what's coming up for you around this?
Yeah, I really understand what Heather's talking about. I don't have little children to play with, but it definitely, it's been so up and down. That's what's really caught me off guard a little bit, and is that I'm by nature a really positive person, and I love to have fun. That's kind of like my core who I am, and so I see the best in lots of things. So I've had wonderful experiences. I've spent a lot more time alone, and I don't usually like to be alone very much, but I've been forced to do it, and it has made me so much more relaxed in a lot of ways. I almost feel like I've gone back in time to when I was much younger, like a young adult, way back in the 80s, and life, it felt different, and I hadn't felt that feeling, but I felt it recently. I almost feel like I did back then, with just hanging out at home and baking or making art, things that I couldn't calm myself down enough to do before. So I think that's been good, and I think I've fought a lot internally with being alone, and so it's been a struggle, but I feel like I'm getting there. I'm getting better at it, so that's good. I even went on an overnight backpacking trip by myself, and I was terrified. Luckily, there was lots of people everywhere. Like, it wasn't like I was alone on top of the mountain. I was, at a campsite on top of the mountain. So it was all fine. But that was like a little challenge or something that I had to do, and I did it. And I just feel like it's just helping me to grow personally. I couldn't have done it as well, what Jackie said about the 6, the people that you choose to have in your life. Like, that's been amazing to me. The people who have just really helped make sure that, I'm okay and staying strong and not alone, that kind of thing. So that's been really good. Yeah, so I think I think we'll just kind of keep evolving, and I really get it. It wasn't all great before. We all kind of think it was, but no, it was really, really, really stressful before as well. And it's just kind of a different kind of stress now. I do wish that I hadn't had to go through like the really hard parts, which were having to let people go. So that's been just devastating, you know, to have to make those sort of decisions that are impacting other people's lives like that, and just for no reason besides the pandemic. And so really kind of dealing with that kind of pain that I feel, but knowing that actually it's them, other people that are going to suffer even more. You know, that's been really hard as well. But yeah, just trying to stay positive and think of new ways of doing things that we used to do.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And somebody commented as well that we've all learned a lot about empathy, and, you know, with what you just shared as well, going through this experience and having make these tough decisions as well, also learning to have empathy for ourselves, right? Like practice empathy for ourselves, practice kindness for ourselves, right? Like learn to give ourselves permission to really be okay, also sometimes to just not really feel good about the decisions we had to make without, you know, judging ourselves for it, because that can be a really tricky part as well. So thank you so much for sharing that and talking about your personal growth. And I love that you went backpacking on a back overnight trip on your own. I would never do that. I'm too terrified of getting eaten or something. So good for you. That is, I picked that up. Good
Thank
for
you.
you.
I ran into a friend at the top, so I ended up not being that alone. So that was really nice. I had someone to have dinner with, so it was good.
That is awesome. That is great. And Jackie, how about you? What sort of, you know, golden nuggets can you maybe share? What are you doing to sort of, you know, help yourself through this? And also, you know, having a lot of, I'm sure, tough conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of people ask me about this evening and what to anticipate, and I've been kind of joking and saying that when I first got notification that I got to be on this panel with this amazing group of women, and it said, you know, thriving in crisis, I was literally putting underarm deodorant on in the school parking lot as I dropped my kid off like super late for school after a chaotic morning. You know, I have no lunch in my bag and maybe a cup of coffee. So I don't know if I'm always the greatest example of, you know, I think we have to be honest about that. Like we're very vulnerable to every day making a commitment to the fact that this is a practice. And as you said, progress isn't necessarily getting to perfection. I don't know if we'll ever perfect it. And often I got into a background of teaching because I believe you have to be willing to be a lifelong learner. I think one of the things that I do know is that when we have radically changing events that happen in our life, we often talk about, you know, well, when we go back to that normal, and there needs to be this lens to realize that our life might start to become dividing between what happened before the pandemic and what happened after. And we may not be the same people, or the places of work we were at may not ever be the same, and we might be better for it. Right? And that there's resilience in that. There's courage in that. But that doesn't ever make it easy. I will say that I think right now, leading and being part of teams and supporting people is the hardest it's ever been, because it is so complex. And we don't always know every day where everyone's coming from. So it does take a lot of compassion. And I know Marianne's mentioned in the comments, hi Marianne, has mentioned about empathy more than ever. It does require us slowing down. For me, as I said in the intro, I'm a big runner, and so, but I often ask myself some days I worry I'm running away, and when I run, I have to always be thinking about running towards something, and the strategy. So with the support of my husband and my family, I'm out most mornings at 6 a.m. with my CBC podcast on, you know, literally thinking about what my day is going to look like and how that sets me up for success. But I recognize that this point in this game, it's a privilege, because a year ago, I wasn't in a place to be able to do that. You know, I was sleep deprived and struggling. And so I think each day we have to realize that we're it's a journey, it's a practice, it's a commitment. And as I said, I think that safe six is what keeps us resilient. We've often said that it takes a village, and we have to think about who that village is going to be and who that is. I know tonight my mom is on this call, and she's one of the strongest people I've ever met. I've watched her navigate some of the most difficult and challenging times in our lives. And so I think we surround ourselves with those people who embody, who we want to be and what we want to be. And in Whistler, we're uniquely lucky because this is right. I mean, you talk about this panel, but there's a powerhouse of amazing leaders, courageous people who just are so focused on supporting each other. So in the last couple months at Whistler Community Services, like the collaboration we've had from Fairmont, Wendy speaks of these really challenging times that this hotel has had. And since the beginning, that team at Fairmont Chateau Whistler, Isabel Chung and their head chef and all the people who work there have done nothing but help us in an unbelievable and compassionate way. And I think of people like Tourism Whistler and Barrett Fisher, who basically gave up the conference center for us to run the food bank. Like, it comes with empathy, it comes with just doing the right thing. And I think each day we do have to wake up and ask ourselves that, what does that look like? I was in a meeting yesterday, and we're trying to add more hygiene products and products so that we can deliver it to people who are in these high density housing scenarios where we're seeing an increase in COVID positive cases. So we want to give them all the tools in an effort for them to stay safe. And I was on a call with May Madden of the Whistler Black Home Foundation, and 24 hours later, I had a full donation of masks and gloves and hand sanitizer and all these great things. There's no ego attached. It's people coming to the plate, committed to do the right thing. And I think we are just so lucky. And so I think that for me is what motivates me every day when I see these examples of just legendary, incredible people. So, I heard this great quote a few months ago that said, Whistler is small enough that we can work together, but we're big enough to set an example on the world stage to do the right thing. And I think that that's a piece for me over the last couple of months. I heard that at a resort municipality town hall, and it stuck with me because this town is small, but we're kind of put on a stage where the rest of the world is watching. So it's great.
Thank you so much, Jackie. There was so many powerful pieces around what you shared. But, one thing that really stands out for me, and I think that's the strength of this community, is that we're really seeing that so many are choosing collaboration over competition. And, I think that we'd be well to remember that when we come out of that, right? Like, that's one of the many things that I feel like, how can we hold on to the pieces? How can we hold on to the slowing down, playing more, taking some time away from what we do for work and bring that, joy and that connectedness back into our lives, connecting with people that are important, prioritizing some of those things, that collaboration and getting together. So I have a final question for all of you before we head into Q&A. And if you have questions, make sure you use the Q&A box. I can see there's 2 questions in there already, so drop in some more. We've got some time. But seeing that this was brought up, and Jackie, you might have mentioned it, but the question that I have for the 3 of you is, do you have to be always good in order to say that you're thriving? Or can you be okay to have days where it just doesn't feel right and still say that you're thriving? Who wants to go first? Just unmute yourselves.
I'll go. It's funny because all 3 of us on the pre-call said that we were like, we all had imposter syndrome as to why we were selected to be on this call, and so to your point, or to your question, do you need to be thriving? Well, and we will all agree that we are not always thriving. But what I think is important about this discussion, and where I will maybe boldly say, yeah, sure, some days I am thriving, because as to some of the points we've made, although the last few months have been fueled with change and fueled with difficulty, I think that I have had more growth in the last 8 months than I ever have before. And so that would be in essence, a definition of thriving is that growth. It's been forced on us in a lot of ways. But that's kind of my 2 cents on thriving. So yeah, I'll put it out there. And maybe if I say it to myself so many times, I'll believe it.
Yeah, definitely. We all thought, I don't know if I am thriving all the time. I was telling the ladies earlier that even at work, especially in the beginning when it was really hard, we even coined a term, and it was called the COVID cry, because literally it was so stressful that we would go home, and we all, once we started to admit it, and I like Jackie, how she says we normalized it, we actually were able to say, I was so upset, and someone would say, oh, did you have your COVID cry this week? And it sort of was making fun of it, but it was also allowing us to be real and be like, yeah, I totally did. And that really helped, because thriving in a pandemic might, like, what is the definition of thriving in a pandemic? Like, it might be kind of surviving. I don't know. So yeah, there's good days and there's bad days. And I think that you got to just, like with my team, it could be so hard, and we just kept just saying to ourselves, just do the best you can. It kind of reminds me, one of my favorite sort of sayings is that we can only really control 2 things, and that's our attitude and our effort. And so those 2 things. And so that's doing the best you can. And so if I just kind of keep thinking about those, and I feel like I am controlling my attitude and my effort, I feel like I'm doing pretty good. So,
yeah. I think it's a daily practice. So, and I think how we define it and what it looks like is a daily understanding of it. And I think we learn to have compassion when we listen and learn to other people and realize that, their definition of thriving, as Wendy said, could look completely different than ours. I've definitely, in my own life, hesitated from ever saying to someone, I completely understand what you're going through. Because I've learned, even in my own personal life with really difficult events, we all had our own lens on it. We all had our own story and our own version of how it changed us and how it defined us. So yeah, it's a daily practice. And I think you need those people in your life. Like, I know this is the Women of Whistler, and I think you need your women, like you need your ladies to just reach out to and talk to. I'm really fortunate, lovely Liza Wally's on this call as part of Women of Whistler. And you have to find your people who you reach out to and just say, I didn't get it right today. And they're the people that come to you with no place of judgment, only observation and only a willingness to make you do better. I can think of one time in the beginning of this, in the middle of winter, where I was really struggling. I had a baby and I couldn't leave my house, and the plow was coming through. It was the middle of the pandemic, and everybody had to move their cars out of the parking stalls. And there were all these messages on our Facebook, move your cars, you must move the car before the plow comes through. And I kept looking outside, realizing that I just couldn't do it. And my husband was working remotely, but was out that day. And I just saw these 2 wonderful neighbors of mine that I didn't have much of a relationship with. And they just walked out with these shovels, and they just started shoveling my car. And I remember putting myself up against the glass and just banging the glass and waving to them with tears coming down my eyes and just saying, I just felt in that moment that I was anything but thriving. And it's a small thing, like of all the things that you could be stressed about was the snowplow coming, but in my world, it meant everything to me, right? And they just looked up and they waved. And I went to them later and I said, what can I buy you? And they said, let's just continue to be good neighbors. Let's just continue to do the work that we know we need to do as we go through this pandemic, because we need each other. And it just fostered relationships that, with people that I really hadn't talked to. So those are those moments where you can be in your mind, the deepest, darkest places for so many other reasons, and doing anything but thriving. But those experiences prove to be, some of the greatest gifts. So great.
Thank you so much, Jackie, and all of you. I think it's always a brave thing as well to come on and talking about something like thriving when, we see so much hardship around us. But I think it's so important to acknowledge that we get to have days where we thrive, and we get to have days where we just not feeling it, right? And having that support and having those people we can reach out to is so important. And you all shared that. And I think that's so important, right? Community, collaboration, connection. Those are the things that get us through this. So there's a few questions from the viewers. How do you, participants? I don't even know. Like, it's like, what word do you call, the audience? I guess I can still say audience, can I? I'm also learning how to refer to people on online events, apparently. So here we go. The first one is from Liza. She would love to know what the creative gift or learning that you have that has come out of this pandemic for each of you. Who would like to go first? Just unmute yourselves. Heather, you ready?
Sure. I think the greatest gift, and I mentioned it a little bit, for me as being a forced slowdown. And, in terms of spending more time with my children, refocusing, not working, working tirelessly on certain things, but just being able to reset. And so the greatest gift for me has been that, and time with my family, really. That is something that we have had a lot of time together. And it's not always easy with, young children. And there's a lot of people in this community that I know it has been a struggle doing the balancing act. But I will say that sometimes what is the biggest challenge is also the biggest gift. So that's me.
Wendy,
so I would
go
say
ahead.
one of the biggest learnings, or something I hope to take even after we come out of the pandemic, is to really continue to sort of rethink and reevaluate how we do things and what we're doing. Like leading up, you had a path, you knew what you did, and if you were making big changes, it would have been something you really had to think about, or would not be accepted because we always do things the same way. Well, we have now had 8 months of doing things completely different, and we are learning so many little things that we didn't know before. And so I think we're going to hopefully just continue on that and say, well, why were we always doing it that way? And is that the best for our company, for our community, for our family, for our health? And so I hope that we just continue to question and move forward, not move backwards to the way we just were. Like, let's make that even better than it was with everything that we've learned. I think that's going to be the key thing that I'd like to take away.
Thank you. Jackie.
I think the greatest gift is that we focus on the fact that we're human beings, but I would say I was doing a lot of doing, not so much being, and lots of scheduling and going many places. And there's an opportunity when you can't go really anywhere. You localize, you connect with your neighbors, you strengthen friendships with people that have always been there for you, and even more. And you really get to understand who those really important people are in your life. I think right now we live in these challenging times where we present an image sometimes, whether that be on social media or different forums, that might not always be the greatest or truest picture of who we are. But in this pandemic, you quickly learned who was your village and who were your people. And, I'm very strengthened by a lot of the friendships and women that I know, where we were just like, you know what, we're going to commit every Friday night to a house party call that's just going to bring us all together. It's not about, we can't dine out at this point. It's just about being, and it's just about listening. And some of those women in the conversations I had were some of the best conversations we've had in years, because there was a lot less doing and there was a lot more being. And I'm really thankful to the women. I think a lot of us on this call can relate to that. Who were those people? We were able to kind of very quickly understand the significant people in our life. And it wasn't the 600 friends we had on Facebook. You know, it was those key people who showed up, and showed up in ways that we needed them the most. So for that, I feel really grateful.
Thanks so much, Jackie. And there's another question actually for you, Jackie. What can each of us do to make a meaningful difference in our community today? I found that helping builds my own resilience.
Yeah, I mean, helping absolutely does. And I will say right now, we're seeing so many people come to the table who really want to help. I think, you know, we can help in meaningful ways when we spend time finding out or figuring out what is it that people need. You know, like, so similar to my snowplow story, in that moment, I needed someone to dig my car out, right? And that was the most meaningful and helpful way, and something that was really impactful to me in that moment, that meant something for me. I've often said before the pandemic, and I think even more now, there's something that's so simple that we can do, and it's we can ask people how they are and be prepared to hear the answer. Like, Canadians, we're so good at it. We love to ask people how we are, but like pre-pandemic, I was one of those people that would like ask how you are as I was walking away. And the greatest way I think we can strengthen our community is a willingness to like dig our feet, show up and say, how are you? And I mean that honestly and genuinely. And if we don't have the time, if we don't have the ability to do it, you know, then we ask when we do, right? Maybe it's not that moment at school drop off or that opportunity to be connected to market or whatever it is, but be prepared to hear the answer. And then think about how you could support that person. I think if we all invested in doing that, even within our safe six, we'd see some really positive things. Of course, as well, there's some amazing charities, local charities that are great to support, and I know there's something farther in the Q&A around that, so I'll save my comment for that. But I think supporting local, absolutely, and that, you know, that's local franchises, local business, local leaders, local businesses, local nonprofits is something that's going to be really meaningful in the upcoming months.
Thank you. Okay, next question is from Marianne. How do you think we can take these learnings from this time? Well, how do you think we can take these learnings from this time can help us to reframe our thinking about the success of the result from growth-based numbers to thriving based on strength and wellness of the community? And that's for anyone, so go ahead.
I can take this one, and I'd like to maybe tackle it from a small business owner perspective. I think there has to be a reframing of the conversation in a number of ways, and in a sort of a small business perspective. For the last few years, there has been this, you know, and going to my point about things were kind of crazy before the pandemic anyways, small businesses in general were just driven for growth. You know, if you were an entrepreneur, it's like, how successful are you? How big are you? You know, how big can you get? Everything was about grow, 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 beat last year, do better. That kind of drive. And you know, if you're a publicly traded company, then maybe that's your MO. But I think, come bring it back to the small business, I think we really need to reframe how big do we want to be. And I have a fairly small team, and I had kept a small team over the last few years because I had small children. And that was kind of an intentional step. And I did see some other businesses around me that made that aggressive growth. And they pushed and they pushed and they pushed. And when I talk to them now, they sort of reset and say, you know, I don't really know why I had to push that envelope. I had a successful business. It was at this level. It was very manageable. And I pushed it too far. And it put them in a more vulnerable situation coming into the pandemic, because it's all about sort of maybe a sort of level of risk that they took in growth. And so, you know, this is a bit of a spin on that question, but I just sort of want to address that it's not always about being the biggest and the best. And, it's about being comfortable with your values as a company, as an organization, as a town. And I think this is a perfect opportunity for Whistler to reset and decide what is our brand? Who are we going to show up to in the world? And do we need to continue to say we are the biggest and the best? Or do we redefine those values and start thinking about community first? So I hope that helps answer the question a little bit.
I think it did. Thank you so much. And we've got 3 more questions, so I'm going to whiz through them. Thank you so much, Heather. So the next question is from Madison. In these challenging times, can you please name a charity that resonates with you? I'm looking for recommendations. Anyone have a charity in mind?
Well, I'll acknowledge my bias because I work for a nonprofit and a charitable organization, but I've always said that I'm really proud to work for Whistler Community Services. But we're able to do really great work because there are other nonprofits and charitable organizations that also do great work. I know Claire Ruddy's on this call, and the work she does for Aware is so inspiring. They are a small staff of really committed people that are constantly encouraging us to, think about how we can really look at the long-term impact of the environment in our community, how we can cultivate it, how we can strengthen it. And I noticed she's talked about the prosperity, right, over growth. And so Aware is a wonderful organization and charity of choice. Also a huge advocate for Zero Ceiling. That is a great program that supports housing first initiatives and at-risk vulnerable youth and people in our community. And Whistler Black Home Foundation does fantastic work that raises money for organizations and charities across the Sea to Sky corridor, as well as the Whistler Foundation, the Whistler Community Foundation. So lots of really amazing work. There's a lot, but there's something really powerful, and I think it's really important to talk about these nonprofits and these charitable organizations because just like other small businesses, they've had to strengthen, they've had to pivot, they've had to rethink. Their government grants and fundings have totally changed, and they're doing powerful, committed work that's going to impact the community if it stops. So it's really important to continue to give to these organizations in these charitable sectors.
Thank you so much. And Heather, did you have a charity too you want to?
I just wanted to add to your list, Whistler Healthcare Foundation and the women, the 100 Women Who Care organization. I think I got that right. Which does do sort of a rotation through of a number of organizations. So that's a quarterly group that meets. Ashley Urban, I think she's on the call. I don't know. Anyways, those are 2 that I wanted to contribute.
Thanks so much. And Wendy, if you have another one, feel free to drop it in the comments as well so we can get to these last 2 questions. So next one's from Fiona. Any recommendations for how you can be supporting your team members normalize the pandemic? As you say, everyone puts their own lens on problems. Is it best to have discussions on topics as a team or work individually with colleagues? Who would like to answer? Wendy, go ahead.
I think it's probably a combination of both. There's definitely conversations that, are very personal, and especially during the pandemic where you need to be one-on-one. You need to have that. And sorry, my phone is ringing. Okay, it's gone. I'm at work still. So definitely, because what I've found too is you just don't know what people are going through. And we're all sort of, we know what the work struggles because we're all sharing those, but everyone during this pandemic is going through something that you probably don't know about on a personal level, whether it's worrying about their parents or other family members or who knows. So I found that really helpful, and being able to listen and really hear how people are doing, and then also being able to share, which really helps people and feel like they're being heard and able to share. And then from a group perspective, though, we've definitely, as a team, we've needed to connect. A lot of our team is remote, so we have arranged really fun events on Zoom. You know, sometimes they're meetings, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just an opportunity to be silly and to be together and to laugh. And then during the summer, the team that is based at the hotel here, we made a point of, we knew we couldn't really gather, but we went outside and we had often it's really organized and we're really active, but we were like, let's do a beach afternoon. And we just went to the beach and we just socially distanced and just relaxed. And I taught everyone how to do macrame, and we went out on paddle boards, and just having that time together was really great. So I think for the team, it's super important, though, that there is a lot of continuous communication, because there can be so much uncertainty and, worry about the future. And as long as everyone's talking, I think it helps people to feel connected and kind of safe in that environment.
Thanks so much, Wendy. And I have two more questions. One, I want you to give me one word for, so we can get to the last question as well. So what is one thing that you had to let go of during this pandemic? And do your best to just give me one word. Anyone wants to go? That's a tough one. Well,
I was going to say, I think at times this stirs up anger. So there was, for me, it was anger, I think, for sure.
Wendy.
Sorry, I missed the question. My computer's doing funny things. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, that's okay. What's one thing that you had to let go of? And try and answer it in, just give me one word. What did you have to let go of during this pandemic?
My need for control over the situations and controlling. I'm kind of bossy, and I like to have my goals set, and so I had to let go of control.
And I would say planning in the future.
Love that. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so final question is, how do we have a conversation about thriving without leaving people who are having a prolonged hard time just surviving, feeling vulnerable? And there's sort of a second question, how do we talk about safe sex without leaving people who live alone and aren't connected, feeling like they're alone in their loneliness?
I'll say, I think we need to listen. We need to listen without trying to fix. We need to listen without going to a place of judgment or a willingness to go, that's them, this is me, this us and them kind of feeling, because it's certainly not going to help. And I think that when we sit with people who are vulnerable and they're alone and they're isolated, we've got to sit in that uncomfortability, because we're not meant to fix it. So I think that those are the things that are really important. I really appreciated tonight that Wendy talked about, like she said, I don't have these small kids in my house. And so I've had to think about what this looks like being alone. And I feel like that's a conversation that a lot of us aren't talking about. And also, a lot of people who have raised their kids or had these experiences, and now they're looking for a FaceTime call. They're waiting for those connections. And we have to normalize that. We have to talk about it. There's a part of this that is really important and that needs to stay connected. So we have to be willing to listen and try and not fix, is my thought.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Okay, so we're sort of, Heather, do you have one more thought on this? Go ahead.
In the similar, similar to Jackie, but, that recognition, everybody has their own COVID journey. Everybody has their own challenges. And I think that, just taking a step back and trying to think about the people maybe in your family or extended family or work colleagues that don't have kids at home or don't have others at home. I've connected with quite a few people through our community with WNORTH, you know, a lot of single women, and there's also that other layer of safety. And I just wanted, it just came out today, so I wanted to call out a campaign that BC Women's Hospital Foundation is doing, called the We See You campaign, Unmasking Gender Equality. There's a fantastic report. I haven't finished reading the whole thing, but it's talking about violence against women. It's talking about you know, women that are disproportionately affected by this pandemic. So it's worth taking a look at.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think sort of highlighting what Jackie has said a few times through this is make sure you reach out for help, right? Like encourage the people that you know that are alone to reach out for help. And also, you know, again, don't be afraid to ask people how they are, like Jackie said, and just listen. Because what a lot of us needs is really just be heard. And I think that is super critical. So thank you all so much. That was the final question. And we're getting sort of towards the end of the evening. So I just want to thank, of course, all of you for being here, for sharing so vulnerably. And I hope that everybody who listened enjoyed this event. And of course, as Women of Whistler, we always love feedback. So let us know how you found it. If you had any golden nuggets you're taking away, make sure you share it, post it, let us know. You can also message us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, for the most part, and use the hashtag WowBiz. And of course, tag us at Women of Whistler so that we know what has resonated, and also if there's any other topics and speakers you'd like to hear about. And, you know, the Women of Whistler, it's an initiative that really offers to support and, you know, our members, and also offer networking opportunities. And I know that has been difficult throughout this year. So make sure that, you know, reach out to some people. There's some beautiful, you know, opportunities that are out there, and just connect, collaborate, communicate, engage, right? There's so many options to engage right now. And I think that will all help as well. And of course, lastly, I want to thank our partners, our networking partners that are super important, and also the remaining WOW committee who've been active in the comments. Thank you, ladies, and who have also helped promote this event. And without all of them, it really wouldn't be possible to do this event. So again, our presenting partner, Race & Co., who thanks to them, chamber members are able to attend free, as well as our community partner, which is the Women's Enterprise Center, who's always been an incredible support for this. And then the committee, Liza, Wally, Cindy Coughlin, and Haley Manche, thank you so much for being on this committee with me. Couldn't do it without you, and we've had to pivot a bit too to make these events work and figure it all out. And lastly as well, if you are a local business and you would like to get some event exposure as well, or explore networking partnerships even during this, please do reach out to us. Now, again, thank you, ladies, so very much. This was incredible. You shared so many good things. It's too bad I couldn't make enough notes, but some of my highlights of the things that you said were 3 things that I'm going to take away from this. The first one is be fearlessly creative. The second one is, you know, who are my safe 6? And strength is in reaching out, so do it. And the last one is learn to slow down and play more. So those were 3 that really stuck with me. Thank you so much for sharing them. Thank you for your support, for being here, for sharing. And to everybody else, I hope you're going to join us in February. We're going to have an incredibly special treat for you. So keep your eyes and ears open for announcement as we finalize the details for that event. And again, thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful evening. And loads of thank you comments coming in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.